Welcome to the Mom as Well podcast. We are digging deep into the gifts and the gaps in foster and adoptive parenting. I'm Tara Hutton, and I'm glad you're here.
Mama's Well.
Yes, she is. Hi, Amber.
Hey, Tara.
We're in that uncomfortable, we first sit down in front of the microphone. It feels really weird. But thank you. Thank you for coming out. This is Amber Robinson. And I met you, before I let you tell, I'm going to say how I met you. And you've been a huge gift to me. Amber and her husband, which, tell us your husband's name.
Randall
and Amber and Kyle and Tara are both through an agency, DePelchin, our child placing agency. Amber, I'm not going to tell your story, but she is also about your family. We're going to do that in a second. But you are also, you and I serve in a capacity for DePelchin as a foster parent mentor. And you've been doing that for how long?
Probably about 3 years.
Okay,
now.
3 years. And I'm a newbie. I came after you. How long had you been a mentor before I?
Probably a year.
A year. Okay. And so that role is unique because we are foster parents. It's kind of a voluntary position that parents can ask us questions. We might be we meet them at a meet and greet where we can just say hi, welcome, and give them a welcome basket and give them our contact information so that they can reach out and ask questions. And I love that role because I love to share in the emotional struggles that foster parents face, and you do too. But you are a wealth of knowledge, like when it comes to all things foster care. And so I was super happy when you said yes, because I think you have some great information to share. But before we do that, would you tell us about your family and about your journey? I mean, just talk as long as you want. I want to hear, you don't have to start back to the day you were born, but at least to the day where you and Randall started in with this foster care journey. And we have plenty of time, so just relax and tell us your story.
Sure. Randall and I got married a few years out of college, and I remember when we were engaged, we had just a really, really short conversation. I think I was the one who said, I think it would be really cool to adopt a kid one day. Mm-hmm. And he said, yeah, I think that'd be cool too. And neither one of us have any adoption in our families. We didn't have any friends that were adopted. Mm-hmm. But that just came to me, and I just spoke it to him, and he was like, yeah, I think so. But we got married young, and I was focused on my career, and he was focused on graduate school. And so kids were not in the short-term picture. And then fast forward several years, all of a sudden, for maybe like a 6-month period, every single thing that we were coming into contact with was related to adoption. Really? So I'd turn on the radio. There was something about adoption or foster care. Huh. I'd turn on the TV. This was before kids, when I had more time to watch TV. Something about adoption or foster care. Then we were at church, and we found out that there was an adoption ministry at our church, which we didn't know. At that same time, we had friends from church, high school, and college who were all adopting. Wow. And then the real clincher was that the head minister at the time gave a sermon on adoption and the biblical doctrine of adoption. Mm-hmm. And we both grew up in church, and we had never heard this before. And so, in a nutshell, it's just that whenever you place your faith in Christ, you are adopted into God's family. And so in the Old Testament, you were in God's family if you were Jewish. It was a biological bloodline requirement to be in his family, but now it's by faith, and it's any person of any race, color, creed. And then I thought back to, well, that's right. I grew up in the Episcopal Church, and we said the Nicene Creed, and we said we are adopted as heirs into God's eternal family. So it was some new information, and then it was some things from my past. I was like, that's right. Like, adoption really is the heart of God. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. All the references to the orphan in the Old Testament. Constantly referenced as a member of a vulnerable people group that the people of God are called to look after and care for. So then also in the same sermon, he talked about the huge need there was for the foster care system and internationally, orphans all over the world. So we had another conversation. I
Yeah.
said, I'm really, really excited about this adoption thing. And I know we talked about it a long time ago, and it's a really quick thing, but I would really like to look into this.
Wow.
And he said, yeah, me too.
Well, that's all you needed, right?
I know. What a blessing, because most guys, it takes them longer to get on board than the wife. So so we just started researching and talking to our friends, and I started attending an adoption support group at church. And, which I now lead. So come full circle.
Wow.
I still
and
remember.
how many years ago was that?
That was probably 2012.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And so we narrowed it down to, we wanted to foster to adopt. And so we got licensed through DePelchin in 2013. And we were foster parents for 5 years. We fostered 4 kids, 2 sets of biological brothers. And we adopted 1 set, and that's Max and Ben. And they're ages 6 and 4 currently.
Okay. And so how long ago was your adoption finalized?
Well, and they were separate placements. So for Max, it was a year. It was very short due to unique circumstances. And then Ben, it took like a year and a half.
Okay.
So
all right. And they're siblings.
Yes, biological siblings. Yeah.
Okay. And so tell me, so here's what I've when I listen to you at these meet and greets, you are just like, first of all, you're very calm. Yeah, that comes across very, like, you're very calm, and things just, it seems like when there's a problem, you find solutions. And there's a lot of problems in foster care.
But once you've been around it enough, they're common problems, right? So,
I tell people, sometimes they'll say, well, this person didn't call me back, and this person did. I mean, like, honestly, it's not run like a typical business.
Yeah, and I have a background in corporate America, and I was a finance major, and so I like things very organized, and I like good communication and quick communication, and so it was a shock to my first interaction with the nonprofit world. I was like, what's going on here? How can so I wanted more organization, more structure, more communication, and so I feel like that's what I'm able to give as a mentor.
You do. You absolutely
like
bring
a roadmap for I call it like being a professional foster parent. Not that you would ever say that to a caseworker, but that is how you view yourself, and you're organized, and what issues your child came in with, and what diagnoses or evaluations they've had, and how they've progressed through those, and their current status right now, and you're able to communicate all of that to the key stakeholders. Yeah,
like, I mean, who wouldn't want some of that? I mean, I know you've put some of this into some documents and stuff, but because I was reading over them the other day, on the DePelchin Facebook page, you can go and click on files, I think, or something like that. And you've got, so let's talk about, because when I started this podcast, I have this way of thinking that I heard someone else talk about it, and it's really become true in my life, and that is that there's these hard things that we go through. Like, I call them, in my intro, I said the gifts and the gaps. The gaps are like the hard things. Like, there's a gap in the system, right? There's a gap. The whole foster care, it exists because there's a gap, right? And as foster parents, we're being asked to stand in that gap. But that's the catalyst, right? That's we're asking. That's the big gap. That's the big, like, red blinking light or whatever. But there's these other gaps that you're talking about, that we're all talking about, and that is, with the system, sometimes with the agencies, sometimes with the finding resources. So let's talk about some of those. Like, what are some of the biggest things that you face as you're running your ministry? Because not only are you a mentor, but you actually run that ministry now that you that you attended before, when foster care and adoption was just like this idea in your brain. You were going to that. Now you are in charge of it and you're running it. So you're mentoring a lot of foster parents. What are some of the things? Because honestly, this is probably the things our listeners are going, yes, tell me. So tell us, like, what are some of the big challenges that you face?
So there's a really steep learning curve to becoming a foster parent. And I think most people think when they go through all their required training with their agency, their child placing agency, that is what they need to know to be a foster parent. And that definitely definitely is a huge part of it. But there's all sorts of other things that there just isn't time to train on and is not legally required for them to train on. And I think the biggest gap there is training on the legal system. So you probably don't even realize when you get your first placement as a foster parent, that there is a legal court case that is started whenever that child's placed in your home. And it is the state of Texas versus the biological parents. And you are not a legal party to that case. There are plenty of other people who are. You are the only one who has no representation and is not like required to be at every court case, every court hearing. So you are behind the ball on day one if you do not know about the legal system and about how foster care cases are pushed through the system. So that is a lot of the training that we do in the ministry as mentors. I have a handout that I give them that talks about what happens when a child enters foster care as an emergency placement.
Yeah. So what does happen?
So a caseworker has to make a case to the judge as to why this child needed to be removed from their home. And usually it's due to abuse or neglect. And the judge has to agree that it's serious enough that the child needs to be removed. And usually there's a short search for relatives because emergency placement is this child is in such a bad situation that they need a place to spend the night that night. They need to stay home now. So they will look for relatives, but it can't be an exhaustive search in just a couple hours. So then that kicks off a whole timeline. It's normally biological parents have about 12 months to get their act together and complete their service plan. As a huge bonus, they get their children back. But only about 30% of parents in the state of Texas actually are reunified with their children, which to me was just, I thought it would be much, much higher when I first heard that. But a lot of the reasons why children come into care are addiction and mental illness of the parents. And so those are really hard to dig out of and to turn your life around. So every, 2 weeks in, there's going to be a status hearing. And then about every 3 months for a year, there's more status hearings on the child. And then the trial should occur at 12 months. And then unless the judge grants the parents 1 6-month extension to complete their service plan. It used to never happen unless they were like 90% done with their service plan. Service plan would be things like passing drug tests, meeting with your caseworker monthly, parenting classes, substance abuse classes. It's kind of tailored to the parents' needs. So then at the end of the 12 months or 18, there's a trial, and either the parents keep their rights and get the children back, or the rights are terminated. It can get a little bit more complicated than that, but
that's the basics there.
And so children cannot be adopted unless they have no legal parents. You have to sever that legal relationship between their biological parents before other parents can come in and legally adopt them. So once, if the parents' rights are terminated, then the children are legally freed for adoption. And then that kicks off another 6-month process called adoption prep, where a bunch of different things have to happen before you can actually finalize the adoption.
Yeah. So again, I'm immediately taken back as you're talking about that. I was exactly where you were talking about, which is I don't know anything about the legal system. As a matter of fact, our first placements were all done in what they call family-based services, which the courts were not involved at that point. So up until my daughters came to live with us, and my daughter was actually placed with us through a family-based services, which is kind of like more of like a kinship placement in a way.
It's like a stepping stone, like maybe for the first infraction against the parents. Like, well, we're not going to put the child in formal foster care, but let's just see if we can help you get things together while your child is at a different
And that's what our agency did. Our agency kind of provided a place for kids who, like, say they were trying to find a kinship placement, which that means a relative or a close friend. If they don't have that, then they would reach out to our agency.
Okay.
And so anyway, my point is I didn't know any of that. And I think you're right. I think a lot of foster parents, and honestly, that is one of the scariest parts of it. Don't you think? The legal system?
Yeah.
Because like you said, you're not in your hands are kind of behind your back.
Yes.
Tied.
And I think there are many levers that you have as a foster parent that you're never told about unless someone tells
tell
you.
us those, because I don't.
So you should attend every court hearing. Absolutely. They're public hearings, so anyone could walk in and attend them. I think right now during the pandemic they're on Zoom.
Okay.
But normally you could just walk into the courthouse. And so you don't have to feel like you don't have a right to be there. You are the child's 24/7 caregiver.
What if your caseworker says, oh no, you don't need to be there?
It's very common. Yeah. It's true. You don't need to be, but you definitely should be.
So how should you handle that as a foster
I
parent?
would say things like, oh, well, that's okay. I just really want to be informed and I want to be there in case a question comes up. And, so like maybe you would say something to the effect of like how much your child has improved with these therapies and you want to, be there to speak up if needed. And I just really want to be informed about the case, something like that, because that is where you're going to get all the firsthand knowledge of what's going on. Otherwise, you're relying on a caseworker, a CPS caseworker, to tell you what happened at court and to accurately relay the pertinent details. So also you have a legal right to be informed by mail of all court hearing dates. And if you're not on that mailing list,
how do you get on that mailing list?
I would ask CPS to say, I haven't gotten a notice for the court hearings, but then the court hearings change all the time. So I would always reconfirm with the caseworker like a week in advance, like, okay, has this court hearing changed? Is it still this court at this time? And then, or this date at this time. And then I would always attend in person. And then you also have a legal right to speak, to be heard as a foster parent, which is new. That started in 2017.
Oh, okay.
Texas legislature passed a new law that you can be heard.
And how would you manage that?
So whenever the case is called, it would be, the child's last name, the year, and then some numbers after that. You rise just like everyone else stands up and you approach the bench.
Even if you're not asked?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Wow.
Because if you don't, you have probably wasted a lot of time. It can get a little loud in there with lots of background noise. Not everyone speaks into the microphones at the judge's bench. So you could have just wasted like half a day if you go, but then stand back or stay seated. And also then the judge doesn't know you're there. Okay. And I think it's really important.
No caseworker has ever told me that or asked me to approach with them.
Oh, wow.
And I went to every single one of my children's hearings, but I didn't have that strength inside me. I didn't even know. Now,
I think 99% of people would think it's not my place.
Yeah. So
but it absolutely
this is really good information. Okay. So keep talking about, so you would just stand up immediately and then just move forward.
Approach the bench. Yeah, so there's just forms a semicircle in front of the judge's bench. And the legal parties to the case would be, the children are not going to be there.
Sure.
But the child's court-appointed attorney, also known as the ad litem, the mom and biological mother and father, most likely. The father's not always known. And then their court-appointed...
Oh, did you hear that? Sorry, Amber. Our studio, there's a loud motorcycle or something. I want to make sure that they heard what you said. So
sure,
go back and say that again.
The legal parties to the case would be the child's court-appointed attorney, the biological parents, whoever is known, and then their court-appointed attorneys.
Okay.
And then there's also a county attorney, county CPS attorney. And then there could be a child advocate. They wouldn't be a legal party to the case, but they would also be present.
Which would be like CASA.
CASA, also known as CASA.
Also known as CASA. Okay.
And then you would just stand up there as well. And then the judge will ask everyone to introduce themselves. And so it'll say, so-and-so attorney for the child or whatever. Yeah. And when it gets to the foster parent, you do not state your name.
Yeah.
You're
I did that once too.
Yeah.
On accident in a mediation.
Well, it's very
They corrected
natural.
me.
Yeah, very natural. So you would just say, I'm the foster mother. And they would never tell you to sit down or anything. And you get to stand right there and hear everything that's going on with the case.
I did not know that.
And if you're there, the judge needs to see that you're there. It's only going to benefit you as a foster parent, one, to be informed, and secondly, to have all legal parties of the case know, hey, she's informed, she's on the ball, she knows what's going on with her child and with the legal case. She's here to advocate if necessary. And you'll probably get questions if you're there. You're not going to get any questions.
Did you do this? Did you learn this after? Okay. So you did.
Well, my whole first placement, I never went to a single court hearing. the importance of it was never stressed to me.
Okay.
And so I just didn't go.
Okay.
And now with my second, third, and fourth placements, we were there every time.
And did the judge always ask you questions?
Not always, but I
Okay.
did get asked. I was asked to testify. There was plenty of times, and then also you catch incorrect information that's being passed on
What do you do
about the
then?
child.
Do you speak up?
Yeah, that's tricky. That's tricky.
It's intimidating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's some people who are brought to court in shackles.
Yeah.
There's some people who have to be subdued by the bailiff. Like it is. It's like a different world that you step into. It also can be awkward if the biological parents are angry that their children have been taken into foster care.
Sure.
Of course, there's a wide array of feelings about that, just as there are human beings. But you could be like standing next to someone, like a few feet away from someone who's like really angry at you.
Yeah.
So just expect court to be awkward and stressful.
Yeah.
But it is still worth it to go.
Yeah.
It's really important.
That's really good information. And nobody ever told me that.
And I'm not surprised. Like I hear that all
Yeah.
the time. So it's our job as mentors to disseminate that information.
Yeah. That's really good because, again, back to the feelings surrounding the courthouse and the hearings, all of that is so, for someone who feels much safer when they're in control.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is not a place to feel in control. I mean, you just don't.
Right.
I mean, foster care is not something that you can control very well. I
Right.
mean, we can control what we can control, and that's what you're speaking about right now. Or these are the things that you can do.
Right. And the judge has the most control because he's going to make, the ultimate ruling. But then the second most influential person in the case is the child's ad litem, the child's court-appointed attorney. And that is a person you need to find out who that person is.
Yeah.
I would ask your child placing agency as opposed to your CPS caseworker because your caseworker will be like, well, why do you want to know? Like, well, how do you even know who this person is or even know to ask that?
Yeah.
And CPS knows that the ad litem has more power than they do. And they don't always like that.
Yeah.
So I would ask your child placing agency who's the ad litem. They're all licensed through the Texas Bar Association, so you can Google and find their contact information. And I would call that person and say, hi, I'm the foster parent for so-and-so, and I'd like to meet you. I'd like you to meet your client. Some of these court-appointed attorneys have so many court appointments that they don't have time to meet every client, especially like the young ones who aren't talking.
Yeah.
But it's really important that you form a relationship with that ad litem and you tell them like you're in it for the right reasons. And again, you're the professional foster parent who is keeping them informed about their client, who a lot of times cannot speak for him or herself, about all the issues they came into care with, the interventions and evaluations that have been done, and how they're progressing, and how they're thriving in a stable, nurturing environment. And also
good.
that person is a huge source of information. Well, how are the parents doing on their service plans, or are there other siblings in care? Because you aren't going to know anything when you get this emergency placement.
Will they tell you that kind of thing? I guess it just depends.
I think I've never had a caseworker or an ad litem ever say, you don't have a right to know that, or I can't tell you that. But I've always approached things just like with my notebook, like very organized, finance major, like business minded coming out. Like, okay, well, here are the questions.
Are you a 1
I
on the
have.
Enneagram?
I'm a 2 with a
2?
3.
Okay,
Strong
2 or 3.
3.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
You kind of have to take some of the emotions out of it. This is a professional business relationship when you talk to them. And so the ad litem would know, are their relatives asking for placement? And not so that you try to shut everyone out, but just you're mentally prepared. You have accurate expectations, and you have to know that all legal cases are extremely fluid. So the permanency goal may be unrelated adoption, but then they may find like a great relative, and it may be they may change it to be concurrent with relative adoption. And so roll with the punches. Don't panic about changes in the case immediately. Continue to talk with your caseworker and with your ad litem all the time. I mean, don't irritate them. A lot of times they're really busy, but don't assume that they're talking to each other either. That's another thing. So anything that you find out from the caseworker, tell the ad litem. So it's keeping the caseworker and the ad litem informed, and then also asking them the right questions. What should I expect at the next court hearing? Are you going to look for a change of placement? All these things. So it's just staying on top of it and greasing the wheels of communication.
That's good. That's very good. I did find that they did not communicate with each other you know, like just because. And one thing I would do towards the end when I started to have a little more, you know, confidence in what I could do and not do was to, when I would send an email, I might copy everybody on it so that, you know what, I said this to everybody. And then you kind of have this chain, I guess,
paper trail. Yeah, if you found out something big at the doctor's, you know, and you had to go see a specialist, and this was going to be like a long-term issue, everyone needs to know this.
Yeah.
And the easiest way that everyone can know it is, by putting everyone on the same email. And also, if there are relatives that are stepping up to consider placement, they need to know about this long-term medical issue. It's not just affecting the foster parent and the child. Yeah,
but that wouldn't be our role to reach out, obviously.
No, it would be your role, right, to disseminate it to the caseworker and the ad litem.
That's communicated. Yeah, that's good.
And then if I have a subsequent conversation with the ad litem about an interested relative, I'd say, do they know about this long-term medical issue? Because that is a serious consideration, you know. So I would kind of like feed the ad litem points to bring up in court or with relatives or just like things to think about.
Man, when they see a well-equipped woman with the notebook, smart girl coming their way, they're probably like, oh no, here she comes. She's going to keep me on my toes, which is our job.
It is. And also, you know, you can frame it in a way like you're trying to help them. You're making their job easier. It's very easy to do with a caseworker. So if you take a child to the doctor, you always have to email the forms that you're required to bring. And so I would email them, but then I would say, we went to the doctor for an ear infection. Here's like what the doctor found. Bullet points, like 1, 2, 3, attaches the paperwork. So they're not just like sifting through the 4-page, you know, medical encounter form to figure out what happened.
That's good information.
So if you view yourself as like a partner with them or a helper, they tend to react a lot better to it.
So I would definitely say that the legal system, the legal process, I mean, the whole thing, when you talk about hard things and gaps, you know, when kids go through this for a year, I mean, they're separated for a year and then they go back and then maybe they come back into the, you know, like, this whole thing is a gap. It's just a huge gap. But the legal system, I think, is something that scares us as foster parents because we don't.
And then, nothing about it.
You can talk about this because at some point a parent does have, and I think it's changed, and you probably know the answer, but a foster parent can intervene and become party to the case. Tell us about that.
Once you have had possession of the child for 12 months, this is a law that was changed in 2017 as well.
Okay.
Once a foster parent has had possession of the child for 12 months, they can hire their own attorney and ask the judge for permission to intervene in an ongoing court case. So the ongoing court case is State of Texas versus the bio parents, and the judge doesn't have to agree. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Whether you can become a legal party to that case and have your own legal representation, which that lawyer can call witnesses and introduce evidence. And so you have a ton more influence over the court case. You're not just like a bystander that can approach the bench and answer when asked or raise like one small concern. And that is really only done when you have serious ethical concerns about where the case is headed. So if you have major red flags for the child's safety, if they go back with the parents or a relative. And CPS is ignoring them. And the ad litem is ignoring them. So you don't just ask to intervene just to win the case. That's never what it's about. We did intervene in one time with our 4 placements, and that was when we had serious ethical concerns about a relative. And this wasn't just based in our own, like, you know,
opinions.
This was like they had criminal history. And some people were actually wanting to still give them a chance even with their criminal history. And the criminal history wasn't
not good.
It wasn't good. It wasn't something petty. So that's why we intervened. And ultimately we were allowed, the judge allowed us to intervene, and that was helpful, and we were able, that was our younger son. We were able to adopt. But
well, you bring me to another, you talked about, well, I mean, I guess I brought this up, but the other thing that I think, when I think about the legal care, the legal system, I think about that is the part of foster care that you are just really, you know, your hands are tied, right? And so what does that do? Like how do we approach foster care? Because that's just the truth of it. That's the truth of it, is that we come into this, you guys came into this, I guess foster to adopt. You were looking to adopt, right? Like you were wanting to do that. Now it seems to me from just outward looking in, like you guys were really clear about your role as foster parents, and that you were just, how was that? Like waiting, knowing that the goal is reunification, right? That's always the goal, right? I mean,
not always.
Okay, I don't mean legally the goal,
okay,
but I meant not legally the goal, but like the goal of foster care is a temporary placement. Yeah. So knowing that you were walking in, you went to a support group beforehand, which I kudos to that, because I think a lot of people walk into foster care like my husband and I, clueless about what we were getting into.
And I learned so much from going to the support group for 2 years. Yeah. It's like you learn the jargon, you hear people's stories. Yeah, you learn. Yeah,
so talk about how because this is another huge gap. This is where I was trying to go. It was a roundabout way, but I'm trying to get to the other huge gap in my mind is that parents, and we see this all the time, right? These parents are dying. Maybe they've had infertility, or maybe they've there's a host of reasons that maybe they were just like you guys, and they just didn't want to have their own children, and they just wanted to adopt, but they long to have their own child and to have a child in their home. But this is such a contradiction to truly the goal, not the legal goal, but the goal of foster care. So how do we navigate that as foster parents?
Yeah, I think it took me like 3 placements to get to like a much better, more emotionally healthy view of what our role is. Even though we didn't come into foster care as foster parents from a position of loss. It was our first choice to grow our family. You still have fear of getting attached to a child and not being able to adopt them. And you can mentally, try to rationalize it and say, well, we'd be okay with that. But then once you have this helpless child in your home, and you hear really scary things about why they came into care, you just want to protect them forever. And so there was a lot of fear with our first placement that they were going to find, and relatives came forward. And there was a lot every time there was fear. There was, my blood pressure would raise and I would get like very worried. And ultimately we were able to adopt him. And I think having one child that you have adopted allows you to take a breath and open yourself up to more risk on subsequent placements. So
you felt more, we did like you could breathe, like this worked out. This was okay. This.
Right. So exactly. So I think having, everyone comes to this in a different way. For me, with our own perspective, that was helpful to adopt our first placement. But then we fostered a sibling group of brothers that were unrelated to Max, the child we adopted, and that is where I feel like I grew most as a foster parent, because we weren't able to adopt them. And so they were with us for 6 months and 2 months. We got a surprise sibling. We got that twice now. Mom just gave birth. No one knew she was pregnant. So we helped those boys in their greatest time of need. The older one was a year old, didn't know his name, didn't have any words, would eat to the point of throwing up. Like, he had been severely neglected for the whole first year of his life, and we helped him improve so much, like just become a more secure, happy child, to know like food will always be here. Home is a safe place. You can count on us to protect you. And so he improved so much. I would say like that's not the same child that was dropped on our doorstep 6 months ago. Like, not at all. So even though he and his brother went back with biological aunts, I saw the huge improvement and the help we were able to offer him that will impact him for years to come, not just for those 6 months he's in our home. And so I think, we're showing these children, even if they're barely verbal, like just by the way we treat them, like you are valuable, you are worthy of being taken care of. We're showing them what unconditional love looks like. I treat you no differently than our son, whether you're here for, a few months or forever. And I feel like those things go to the core of a person, and they carry those with them. And research even shows that whenever a child has learned has had a healthy attachment, they seek out healthy relationships later in life. And so that taught me that, like, my worst fear as a foster parent came true, that we had children and we loved them and we helped them, but we couldn't adopt them. And it was still worth it. And you still can have a lifelong impact, even from a temporary placement. And so it was like the hardest thing that we experienced, like saying goodbye to them, changed us immeasurably, and gave us like a whole different outlook on future placements. That awesome. This is what it's about. It's about helping kids for as long as necessary. But it makes you so vulnerable. And I think that's why people are so scared of it. The number one thing I hear from people considering foster care is, but I don't want to get attached to not be able to adopt. And it's,
or I couldn't do that. They say that all the time.
It's too hard.
I just couldn't do that.
You couldn't love a child in need?
Well, the thing is, what they're really saying, what they're really doing is complimenting us, because they're saying, you did this and I couldn't do that. They're putting, in a way, I mean, some people take offense to it. But I don't take offense to it. I just think they're saying to me, that's really hard. That's what I think they're saying.
That's too hard for me.
Too hard for me. And it was too hard for me, actually, when I started it. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know. I mean, it is hard. When you're telling the story, I'm remembering Kyle and I, so we got into foster care, we had, our youngest was like, I don't know, 13 or so. Like we could see the finish line, Amber. And so, but different, I'm not going to get into the whole story, but that placement, that first placement that came, and even our paperwork said foster only. And I remember them telling us, this one might go to adoption. Are you sure you want this placement? And we basically just said, look, I can't tell you 100% we won't, adopt, but I certainly can't say we will either. Like, you guys have to make this decision. And they ended up placing her with us. And oh my gosh, newborn baby, fell head over heels, all 5 of us, in love with her. Like, it's what you just said. That's what brought it my mind. You are the only person in the world at this moment this child, that to take care of this child. Right.
And who would be there if not for you?
Yes. And you fall in love.
And it's so purposeful. Like, I feel like emergency placements are addictive in a good way. There is nothing more meaningful and purposeful than helping a child when they've just been removed from their home.
Yeah. It's crazy how that happens. And we fall in love, and 4 months later we get a call literally on a Friday, and saying on Monday this baby's going back to their mom.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So we're like, okay, and honestly, it was my birthday week and I had plans. I canceled all my plans just to grieve. I just didn't want to put her down. I was holding her, and my husband, we were both the same. Everyone was in love with her. And I remember thinking to myself, my husband, I used to carry her in a wrap. And my husband would say, are you going to give her the mama the wrap? And I said, no, that's my thing I did with her, but I knew in my heart that wasn't what I needed to do. You know what I'm saying? And so I sat there that morning, and really just in holding her, and really just kind of a unconscious prayer in a way. But I was looking out my back window. I have these swivel chairs, and I was facing out the back window with her and grieving. And the morning we were going to take her back, and I turned back around, and I knew what I needed to do. And I told my husband, okay, I know what I need to do. I want to give this mama the wrap, and I want to go by this barbecue place that's on the way to the thing. I want to give her a baby shower. I want to get barbecue, and I mean, something shifted in me. Right. And we got up there, and I had given her all the clothes, everything. Like, I thought, this mom's never had a baby shower, and for whatever reason, 4 months ago they thought she's going to be adopted, and now they think she's going back. I don't know all the details of that. Right. But that's what we're asked to do. So we did, and I remember we buckled her in the car seat. We gave her all the things. We walked her down to the mom's car. Kyle and I buckled her in the car seat. And I remember walking back up to the building, and we had each other's hands, and we were sad.
Yeah.
But we looked at each other and we just said, there was some strength that rose up. And this is why it reminded me of what you said, that you were stronger after you did something that was so hard and you thought you couldn't do. We looked at each other and we said, we could do that 1,000 more times.
Yeah.
Like, it felt so good.
Yeah.
To know that you had loved so deeply, and that you, in a way, something gave me the strength to love that mom too, and that felt good.
Right. I think there's a lot of joy in obedience.
Yeah, that's
like
the gift in the gap.
You're doing the right thing. Like, this is your purpose. You are faithful to your call, and you gave this child or this family like exactly what you were called to do.
Yeah, but I didn't want to.
Yeah, you have to get to that point.
My heart shifted.
Right. You have to get to that point where it's not about you. It's truly about the child.
Yeah, and we aren't in control of. We can go and stand and tell the judge, not do what you said. I think that's awesome. I wish somebody would have taught me that. But we can do all that we want. Agreed. And then again, the gap. So let's. Those are some really, honestly, biggies, right? Tell me about your family, like in your story. I know you've shared with me a little bit because we have sort of some similarities. But your family, one of the big gaps has been, or not gaps, but a challenge that you perceived as a challenge at one point, and you, in your words, I've heard you say, an unexpected blessing, which is what I just told you about. Was tell me about that in your family.
Sure. So we knew enough about the biological family or the biological parents, I should say, that it was not going to be safe. No one would recommend that we get to know them. For visitation, I would bring my boys to the rooftop of the CPS building, meet the caseworker there, and she would take them in so that the parents didn't even see my car. And this was not my doing. Yeah. This was from the caseworker. Okay. So it's not like we were demonizing the parents. Sure. This was the message we were sent from everyone, from the ad litem and the caseworker, this is not a safe situation. Okay. So, and that's really hard to hand your child over to here's not a safe situation. Yeah. We're meeting on the rooftop. Yeah. So, even though they're supervised by CPS and everything. So in my mind, there was just no chance for a relationship with the biological family until my boys were adults and they could reach out on their own. Yeah. And that's how we perceived it. But right before we adopted Max, our older son, the caseworker said, are you open to sibling relationships? Because they have 3 older siblings who were about to be adopted by paternal grandma. Okay. And being the good, professional, organized foster parent, of course we are open to sibling relationships. Yes, of course. Yeah. You don't want to say anything. I think that's a lot of, as foster parents, we're walking on eggshells. We don't want to offend anyone. Yes. We don't want to show anyone that we have doubts or that we're not doing the right thing, or I don't know how to handle this challenge
because
with my
child.
child.
You always feel like they're judging.
Yes.
They're always
you have to be approved.
Sizing you up.
Yeah, you have to be approved to be a foster parent. You have to be approved to adopt. So yes, of course we'll do sibling relationships. That's great. And in my mind, the caveat was if it's safe, if it's a good idea. I know very little about grandma, but I didn't say any of those things. So then a few days later, there's an email from the caseworker that goes out to me and grandma with our contact information, sharing our contact information so we can have a sibling relationship. I was furious because we were anonymous to everyone. I did not. Now I felt like the ball wasn't in my court. This was totally out of my control. Who is this woman? Does she have a good relationship with the bio parents? It's her son and his girlfriend. Is there information flow? My email address is my whole name. So I was just very angry about this. And, I just didn't respond to the email, and grandma didn't respond to the email. And I was like, well, that's interesting. We shouldn't respond to it. Okay. It took her 6 months. And then she responded to that email. Wow. And I was very freaked out by this. Yeah. This is too close. This is too whatever. Yeah. And, Randall said, just email her back. What's the harm in emailing? Yeah. And to me, it felt like opening Pandora's box. Right. But And we also talked about, we do know some things about this grandma, and we do have some reasons to respect her because we have read about her in the redacted record, which for people listening, it is everything the state of Texas knows about the child and their biological parents and their siblings.
But in case we have people listening in other states,
Texas,
just in case, the redacted file, whatever's written, whatever the state knows.
Yes.
That's right.
So, so we knew that grandma had protected these kids over and over and over,
and had adopted,
she hadn't adopted at that point when we started talking. I don't think she had, but we knew that she, as a single woman in her 50s, had taken on 3 grandchildren.
Wow,
that's reason for respect.
Yeah.
So okay, we can email.
Yeah.
And then she would text me. She asked for my phone number. No, my phone number was already given. So she would text me. She would text me on Max's birthday to tell him happy birthday. Well, that is beautiful and wonderful. She never pushed the envelope. She never asked to meet in person. She just, she didn't even ask for info. It was just kind of like.
Did she know Max? Had she met Max?
Or
did she just know of Max?
Okay. I'm not sure. Okay. He came to us at 3 months old. Okay.
That might be personal. I don't know. I just was wondering if she had ever.
Answer. I just don't know the answer. But she had to say, I can't take any more when Max was born. I can't take any more kids. So she had taken 3. I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And so Max was number 4 from the mom. Yeah. And so I think she felt she wanted to make sure he was okay. So then I sent her a picture album. And I said, because again, my heart started to shift. Like, okay, maybe this isn't such a bad thing. So I sent her a picture album of Max, like a picture of him, like every month of his life. Yeah. And she responded back immediately. This was wonderful. Thank you so much for sending this to me. He looks so great and happy when he's in such a loving family. Yeah. So there was never any reason for me to put my foot down and say, absolutely no, this is not okay. And so we took it slow as a relationship, and we gained each other's trust over a year. And then Ben was born. And we decided it was us. She, again, never asked to meet. And we said, would you like to get the kids together? Yeah. And she said yes. Yeah. And so, and we laid down ground rules. Sure. We said, I don't mean this to be offensive in any way, but we need you to respect our anonymity. Yeah. And we don't want your son or his girlfriend to know our names or what part of town we live in. Yeah. And we don't want like info passed to them. Yeah. And she's like, oh, that's totally fine. I completely understand. I would never do that. And so she's not easily offended, and she still isn't to this day, which is very helpful to the relationship. Yeah. So we got together for the first time. Max was like 2.5 and Ben was like a newborn. We met at Pump It Up, so an inflatable place. Yeah. And it was unbelievable to meet them. Because you love your kids so much, and then these people are so closely related to your children, and they look like your children. Yeah. It's just surreal to meet them. Yeah. And so the kids were playing, and so at this time their ages were, there's a 9-year-old boy, a 4-year-old boy, 3-year-old girl, and then our kids, 2 and newborn. So a lot of kids, pretty close in age, except for the oldest child, the boy. And he asked if he could hold his baby brother. Oh, yeah. And so I handed him over, and he's just staring. A 9-year-old boy is just staring into his baby brother's eyes and talking to him. And I just couldn't believe it. And he just keeps holding him. And I tell him at one point, I say, if you get tired of holding him, you can just give him back to me. And he was like, okay, and just continued. And then my husband was bouncing with the other kids, sees that he's been holding the baby for a long time, and comes over and just makes the same comment I had. And he didn't know I had already said it. And I'm like, no, shh, it's fine. And so then I just told the boy, I said, you never have to worry about your brothers. Right. They're with us. We love them. They're safe. We're taking care of them, and you can see them. And the look he gave me was just such relief, and almost disbelief that this was happening and
real,
possible.
that this could be real.
Yeah. And he had actually met Ben before Ben was taken by CPS. Wow. And he's the oldest. He's been through the most. He's seen the most. He's seen siblings and then they disappear. Yeah. And so I think he realized more than the younger ones could have how special this was. And so it's just like another thing that like biological relationships isn't just so the kids can have a play date.
No,
it's so
right?
many
Yeah.
more things than that. You know, for this 9-year-old boy, it was like comforting him
Yeah.
and giving him like some stability. Like this
Yeah.
relationship will have
Yeah.
stability to it. And like you don't have to worry. Older children in foster care are often the caretakers of their younger siblings.
Right.
And so that's what he had been. He had been the
Right.
protector and the caretaker
Right.
when they were in unsafe
Right.
situations.
Right.
And so kind of say like, you don't have
can
to do
relax.
that anymore.
What a beautiful thing to say.
Yeah.
Did that just come to
It
you?
just came.
Yeah.
And I didn't even cry or anything.
Yeah.
But it was like the
You
most...
saw inside his, you
Yeah.
saw him.
Yeah. And I think, and he's 13 now, and he's
Yeah.
still that same precious,
Yeah.
caring teenage boy.
Yeah.
I would just never imagine this. I
Yeah.
think when you've gone through, you know, abuse and neglect and you've been through so many tough things, you kind of take one or two ways. You can become hardened to life, or you can become more empathetic, more
Yeah.
compassionate, and say, I don't want people to go through that.
Yeah.
And that's where he's headed.
Yeah.
And I think it's wonderful. It's beautiful. And
So
he
awesome.
spent weekends with us, and he came for 4th of July weekend.
So just him alone, because
Just him
the
alone.
other grandma has other
3. Yeah, they've all come. Yes.
Oh, okay, they've all come, but they come at different times. But are they all related?
Yes.
Okay, got
yeah,
it.
they
Wow.
are. They're all biological. So the oldest one came for 4th of July, and so he's 13 now, and then I have a 6 and a 4-year-old, and they are just like enamored with him.
Oh,
He's
I'm
the cool older
sure.
brother, and
Yeah.
he's so tall, and they wanted to play hide and seek with him,
Wow.
and so they're like playing, and I tell him essentially the same thing I told
Yeah.
him when he was holding newborn
Yeah.
baby brother. I said, they will do this for hours. You just let them know when you need a
Yeah.
break, okay?
Yeah.
And he was like, okay. He played hide and seek with them for over an hour.
Wow. Yeah.
He is
Wow.
just
So what
an
a
amazing
gift
kid.
you've given. I mean, we really don't know what those little teeny things that if you thought I'm going to do this,
Yeah.
like a year before you did it, what would you have said?
Oh, I'm crazy. I don't know what I'm stepping into. This is too risky. Why would I even enter
Similar
into
to
that?
what people say to us as foster parents, that they say, I could never do that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you somehow do it.
right.
And then you go, wow. Like-
Yeah, and for grandma, we were able to help her let go of her guilt she had
Yeah,
over
yeah.
saying no, or saying I just can't take on any more kids.
Yeah.
and she still gets to have a relationship with that
Yeah.
child. I mean, and more.
Yeah.
And I think because there's more kids too. It gives her. She realizes she did the right thing. Everyone has to have boundaries. You want to be the best
Yeah.
parents for the kids that you have.
Yeah.
And she is able to let that go.
Yeah.
And realize. And I've told her,
That's good.
I've said, like, we can't imagine our lives without
Yeah.
Max. Like,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
And
Thank you for taking care of yourself so that you could take care of those other
Right.
kids.
Right.
Now that we can take care of Max. And
right.
Yeah.
And too. Yeah.
That's awesome, Amber.
And then also for these, for the kids, that my husband can be a positive male role model in their
Yeah.
life.
Are they all boys?
There's one girl.
One girl. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. Well, man, I always listen to you and talk to the new foster parents, and I'm just always, because you have the finance side of you that gets it really organized and knows how to do, but you also have the side of you that just spoke with tears in your eyes about what it's meant to you and what it's meant to your family. And I mean, this thing that we're doing is so messy, and it does take the strength and the courage to and the organization, you know what I mean, and the knowing what to do, right? But then there's also this heart piece of it.
Yeah, you can't organize and communicate your way out of
No.
fear of the unknown and just, an uncertain future.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, you can't. And I know that you are like me and have tremendous compassion for other foster parents who are trying to navigate it. And it is true, once you go through a case, hindsight is always easier, right? You look back and you're like, yeah, you know what? Don't get all worked up. You can tell yourself, don't get all worked up about what they said at this visit or what they said at
Yeah.
that court hearing, because it can change. But when you're in it, you're like,
Yeah.
I can't breathe.
And that's why finding a support group or having mentors, like Mentors for Repulsion, is so important, because we're this tiny pocket of the population that's doing this thing. And a lot of people can't relate. Most people can't relate. They can say, that's a great thing you're doing. I could never do it. But they can't help you when you're in the trenches, when you're scared, when you're wondering if you should have even done this. Or if you're just completely overwhelmed with all the ramifications of parenting a child with trauma. And so finding a support group or leaning on a mentor is so important.
Yeah. So what would you say, Amber? I do this thing at the end of each podcast, and not to put you on the spot, because this is certainly an answer. You can say, I don't know, but I will think about it and I can add it later. But we have what we call the Wisdom from the Well card. And today you are the well. And so I would like to know if there's something you want to say. It can be just something that you say to yourself. If it's something that you've read, just tell me who it is so I can make sure I quote them. But something that you would want to give, to pass on to other foster parents and adoptive parents who could possibly be struggling or just need a word of encouragement, or what would that be? Do you have anything off the top of your head?
I think, to be, which I never realized at the beginning, this came much further into our fostering journey, to be the best foster and adoptive parents, or to be the best adoptive parents to your children, you need to foster biological relationships when it's safe and healthy.
Okay.
That is can be such a huge blessing, and can be an unexpected blessing. Yeah. And it certainly has for our family.
So when it's safe and healthy, foster biological relationships.
Yes.
Yeah. I totally agree. Having come from my husband being adopted and reconnecting, and just my journey with our girls, and I can't say enough. And honestly, at least the experts that I read would validate that when you can, when it's safe, and it doesn't have to, sometimes it's after, a lot of times it's after foster care, right? When we've moved into adoption, because we're really at the mercy of who says we can do what.
Exactly. When you're fostering.
Yeah. So,
and I think it just meeting with the biological family opens up all sorts of natural conversations that you have with your children that maybe wouldn't come up as frequently or naturally without them. And so, my boys ask all sorts of questions, and it just provides an opportunity to have that conversation and to show that this is like not a topic that we're going to shy away from. Like, this is perfectly fine that you ask these questions, and here are the answers in an age appropriate way.
Has that been hard for you?
No, I'm like, crack the knuckles, this is great. This is like what I'm made for, Like, all right, all this training, I get to put it to use, because we fostered such young kids, such young kids.
Okay, so you're now getting to practice the stuff that you've been preaching.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you don't feel in any way, and maybe it does help that the parents, maybe it helps, not the word, but sometimes I can feel some triggers in me that feel my sense, my role. Like whenever my daughter might say, I want my birth mother, or she'll say her name, or, like there's some triggers in me like that, maybe that I'm not enough. I have to keep that in check. You know what I'm saying? When that happens, realizing that that we both play a role in her life, and that they're both equally important, and understanding what those roles are. Sometimes, but a little bit different is that the birth family is not involved the mom and the dad aren't. But that being said, you're still opening up that dialogue for them to talk about, like, why, or ask all these questions. I know we've read a book, and you've deeply read the book. I have skimmed through the book, and the book is great. It's called Telling the Truth. Tell me the name of it.
Telling the Truth to Your Foster or Adopted Child. Okay,
and tell the authors.
Jayne Schooler and is it Betsy? Well, that's good Keefer? Enough. But yeah, Jayne Schooler is one of the authors.
Yeah, and Smalley. Betsy Keefer Smalley and Jayne Schooler. Yeah. So I'll put the link to that book in the show notes. I like the book because it's divided up by ages, isn't it?
Yes.
That's how I remember about it. And so you could go to specific things that you were wondering about. And that's kind of how I read the book. But I pulled it out to look at it again, and it's a great book. But telling the truth, is so important, and always bringing it up for them, because what they can feel is like, I think what your sons feel. I'm going to just guess because I've never even met your sons, but my mom loves these people, so it's okay for me to love these people. And I'm going to put it a step further. I am these people. And if my mom thinks they're lovable, therefore I'm lovable. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely.
Versus if we say it the opposite, it'll really drive home. My mom says these people aren't lovable. They're not lovable. I'm really them. I'm really part of them. Maybe I'm not lovable. You know what I'm saying? Or what have they done? There's just a whole bunch of stuff that they could go down. But to me, for you to say, these are good people. These are your people. I love them.
And even
you can love them.
Pointing out similarities between the siblings. So my 4-year-old boy talks so similarly to his 7-year-old sister.
Yeah.
And when you said that, it sounded just like your sister.
Yeah, that's so neat.
And they're Hispanic, we're Caucasian, and so it's there are some differences, or they're not going to look at us and say, well, I have I wear glasses because you did or whatever, but we can point out similarities to the biological family that they've met, and it's a positive thing. It's this shared commonality that I think all adopted kids are going to look for their roots, who's like me, and so we can point this out even right now.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Amber, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I
fun.
hope it was easy for you.
It was.
Good. I know it's kind of makes you nervous a little bit at first, but I'm starting to get comfortable. I kind of like this. So, Wisdom from the Well card, I'm going to go back and listen to that again. But basically, you said, tell it to me one more time.
To be the best adoptive parent to your child, you need to foster biological relationships when it's safe and healthy.
When it's safe and healthy to do it. That's going to go on our Wisdom from the Well card that you can download in the show notes. There's a link in the show notes. While you're down there, please like and subscribe to this podcast and leave us a comment. And thanks again for joining us. Thank you, Amber, again for joining us. And you know what? It's raining outside, so be safe driving home. And we'll see you guys next week.
Mama's way.